Good evening and welcome to CB8 Speaks. My name is Alida Camp. I'm the chair of Manhattan Community Board 8, which covers the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island and includes about 220,000 New Yorkers. As you can see from the map on your screen, Community Board 8 runs from 59th to 96th Street, from Central Park to the East River, and includes Roosevelt Island. Tonight, our guests are Peggy Price and Lori Bores, the co-chairs of CB8's new Women and Families Committee. Welcome to CB8 Speaks.
Nice
Peggy,
to be here.
I'm glad that you are here. Peggy and Lori bring experience, knowledge, and enthusiasm to the Women and Families Committee. They are co-chairing the committee to provide information and resources to the women in our community, although men, of course, are welcome to join. The committee's first project and the start for our conversation is gender pay. On Thursday, May 10th, the Women and Families Committee will provide a forum on gender pay equity. Recently, there has been much publicity about the disparity between the salaries and bonuses that men earn and those women earn, with greater disparity between women of color and white men, per research done by New York City's Comptroller Scott Stringer. Peggy, would you please describe the forum's purpose?
We decided to have this particular issue as the first in our agenda because of the need, first of all, to channel some of this enthusiasm we had seen from the two women's marches into something that could be quantified, could be made into an issue with concrete action and with measurable results. And so with pay equity, the numbers are astounding and very clear in terms of what the problem is that women face. If I may, just for a moment, share with you a couple of these numbers. Just this April, New York City's Comptroller Scott Stringer, as you referenced a minute ago, released a report, and he found that while women comprise nearly half the workforce in New York City, they are paid as little as half of the average earnings of white men among the highest paying occupations. And women of color would be making, on average, as low as 39 cents for every dollar paid to white men. That's in the highest professions. And if I may, I'd like to just cite some general statistics that were collected a couple of years ago by New York City's public advocate, Letitia James. She found that in New York State, a woman working full-time makes about 87 cents for every dollar a man earns. And in New York City, altogether, women earn about $5.8 billion less than men in wages every year. With that kind of data, it was quite clear that something has to be done. And the discussion has ballooned nationally, but we felt that here in our community, we could provide a platform where women could come and discuss this and other issues, but that this would be a good issue with a clear-cut mission that we could start with.
That sounds great. I was surprised to come across a cartoon from 1988 that described issues with women's gender pay inequities. And it was surprising to me that the issue has gone on for so long, although I have to say my children were surprised that the Equal Rights Amendment has not yet been adopted. In any event, why did you choose this subject for your first forum?
We felt that something quantifiable would be a great catalyst for attracting attention and being able to bring forward an issue that could have concrete solutions. And normally, I suppose most of us would think that if there's a problem that anyone is having, that dialogue would be, or some sort of communication might iron things out. But the gender pay equity problem has persisted for such a long time that we began to think that it needed actual legislation, which New York City has actually had, but legislation to change the hearts, minds, and behavior of people in New York and nationwide. And but it's widely felt that even though we've had some excellent legislation so far, it doesn't actually correct the problem. It takes steps, but it doesn't correct the problem. So what other steps should we be taking? So we're hoping that this forum will collect all sorts of ideas. We have a fantastic panel, but we also will have hopefully a very attentive and active audience who will ask the kind of probing questions that will generate perhaps and hopefully more solutions that would finally remedy this lingering problem.
Right. Well, just picking up on what you just said about the legislation, there was legislation passed in October of 2017 that forbids an employer, private or public, from asking how much you made in a previous job. And I think that that's really important. First of all, because your salary is generally going to be based upon what you are going to think, oh, this is really great because I'm making more money. But if you don't know what people in your profession, other people are making in your profession, men, then it's all off kilter. It doesn't equalize. And I'm not sure that too many people know about that legislation. So I think that that's really important for us to publicize the fact that, like, you cannot be asked what you made in your last job. So that's one of the reasons that we want to, have this forum.
It is important to publicize. This is a good venue, and that forum will be excellent for that. Lori, you had a great story earlier, if you want to share it with all of us.
Okay, yes, I will share it with you. When I was working for one of the networks many years ago, and I became disenchanted with my job, and so I started to look around for other opportunities, and I was offered a job at another network. And only because I knew what a friend of mine was making, a male friend of mine was making in the same job, I knew how much he was making because he had told me when he went to this second network. And so I knew how much he was making. So when they offered me something that was just a slight increase in what I had been making, I just said, no, thank you. And I just kind of sat on my, little tuffet for a while. And eventually they came, and I ended up getting a significant raise from the money that I was making. And so that, what that means is it's all about information. It's like you need to know, if you know what's out there. And I think it's a little bit easier now because we have the internet, but it's like, women, I find, generally don't think about this. It's like, if you're offered a job and they're offering you more money than you're already making, you're going, great, but that's not how to get the most money for your work.
So do you envision this forum providing information for women on how to get information, how to balance the gender pay so that it's less inequitable?
I'd like to just answer that by telling you who the panelists are. And
that was my next question.
Yeah, and I think that we would all see what a top flight group of people these are, who have studied the problem, who have written about the problem, who address it on a day-to-day basis. So let me just tell you about this really exciting panel in alphabetical order. We have Jacqueline Ebanks. She's executive director of the New York City Commission on Gender Equity. Paula England is a Silver Professor of Sociology at New York University, who has written extensively on the pay equity issue. We have Lenora Lapidus. She's director of the Women's Rights Project at the ACLU. And we have Jessica Walker, president and CEO of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. All those people bring different perspectives and different data, information, and possible remedies from different points of view. We have someone representing the business community. We have someone who represents New York City government in this regard. We have a professor, and we have someone from an activist organization. So between that group and the ideas that we hope the audience will bring forward, it seems to me that we have a very exciting evening ahead.
It sounds like there'll be a lot of perhaps controversial discussion and questions and answers and resources and different points of view, which is always useful. It's useful to know what the other side is thinking in order to combat it, and it's useful to be able to have the dialogue in order to assess where the problems are and what questions to ask. So it sounds like a great evening. What other topics would you expect the forum to cover? Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet?
I think the forum itself, the first forum that we're doing, will cover, as you said, there'll be a lot of opinions and controversy and stuff about like wages. So I think that like we're kind of covered with the first one, but we are going to look into further economic issues and other issues down the line, because women are a unique perspective. Like women have differing opinions and different experiences than men do. It's just a fact. And so we need to take into account what those experiences and perspective are. I mean, there are so many areas. I'm always shocked by like medical, things, for instance, because many of the studies that have been done that make, major decisions about heart disease and cancer and whatever, they're all made because people have studied men, because a lot of times women were excluded from the studies because they were taking care of their, reproductive rights. And that's fine. But the fact is that women experience things differently. And that's what really needs to be expanded. So we're inviting people to come to this forum, but in general, we're inviting people to become members of the Women's Committee, because we really want to hear what people's issues are.
That sounds terrific. So just for the audience, the May 10th Pay Equity Forum will be listed on CB8's calendar of board events and meetings. It's on our website, CB8 Manhattan. While you're there, I suggest you sign up to be on our email list. You'll receive notices of board meetings and events like this forum, that other committees are doing, and service announcements such as street closings and updates such as changes to where a committee meeting is scheduled, which sometimes happens. Let's go back and talk about the committee. Could you tell me, Lori, about its mission statement?
What I wanted to get out of this was I was feeling very frustrated at the last year, at the end of, when I went to Washington and I participated in the Women's March, and it was so empowering. It just felt wonderful. But by the same token, it felt a little like, well, now what? Now what? So that's where, my interest in, forming a women's committee, I was like, why doesn't CB8 have a women's committee? We should. We have a different experience. So we need to do it.
When we looked at the kinds of committees that the community board had, we have a health committee, we have an education committee that addresses some issues involving families and women. But we didn't have something specific to address these open economic issues that women face, and yet they were taking to the streets about, that have to do with their fundamental survival financially. And these ranged everything from poor treatment at work to unfair pay, to glass ceilings, to the heavy responsibility of managing a job and a family, and the cooking and the cleaning, and who can do it all. And so it became kind of glaringly apparent that the time was now to help women get have a place where they could bring their socioeconomic issues to, because they were so fundamental on their basic survival and well-being.
Yeah, the fact is that women make less money and they live longer. So that fact alone, identifies a serious problem, for women, because you're not going to have the resources that men traditionally have, and you're going to be around longer. So you have to stretch, so.
So what do you anticipate doing to help women who may have financial questions or needs that haven't otherwise been answered?
Right. Well, we're going to plan another forum. We're in the process of planning another forum to come after this with specific advice about how women can manage their money. How they can stretch or manage benefits and manage just taking a global look at the many financial decisions that women have to make. There was a time not too long ago when women just, I'm going to get married and the husband is going to take care of everything. And that's no longer the case. And I mean, I have to say that I'm pleased that that's no longer the case. But, women have to be smart. The women have to be smart about money. And so that's what we're going to try. And we're going to try and bring some personal financial people together to address those issues.
So the committee's mission statement talks about, as you mentioned, Peggy, socioeconomic issues. You've talked a lot about the economic issues. What about the social or socio issues or psychological issues for women? Do you anticipate the forum dealing or your committee dealing with any of those types of issues?
I think we could both talk to it. My own perspective is that we're thrilled that there is already a health committee at the community board. But financial health is fundamental to women's well-being. You have to be able to afford your house. You have to be able to afford your food, and you have to go to work every day. That shouldn't be a source of angst and a problem for you. It should be a acceptable environment where you can hope to progress, just as men traditionally have had at least the hope of progressing. And I think that once you take away some of the economic constraints facing women, that they might have fewer psychological problems. It ties in together. For example, less stress at work. And when we also address such issues as family leave and sick pay and those other issues that we will also get to, those are social issues that tie into people's very fundamental financial well-being.
New York City recently passed some legislation, I think, about family leave or sick time. Is that something that you might be covering? Of course, I could be wrong about all of this.
No, I agree with you, and thank you for bringing that up. And I want to give a shout out right now to Ben Kalos, who is our representative on the city council,
for half the board's district.
And that's true. And he was one of the first people, not the first, but one of the first people to take a sick leave for the birth of his child. And I thought that was wonderful, both in terms of setting an example so that men don't have to feel that it's not a manly thing to do. Yes, and so I think that's really important, and I think that it's statewide. The leave thing. I'm not sure, but and you're entitled to half of your pay, depending upon the size of the employer.
I guess that's a problem that we don't really know what the legislation is.
But there are so many issues tied into that are so vital that people need to talk about. It's one thing to pass a law, but then how does it work operationally? So someone takes let's say a parental leave period. Well, then the rest of the office has to make up for his or her absence. How does that work? How does it work for the boss to deal with distributing the work that the other person is not doing now? Or would the person want to do that work from home? How can you make those legislative moves work for your own life? And these are the issues that our community has to deal with on a day-to-day basis, so that so that you're not making the rest of the office uncomfortable or
resentful.
Yeah, or the boss. How does the boss handle this smoothly? And so, just a realm of lower level concerns beneath the top level issue that you need to smooth out. And our community board is in such a good position to help because we have these community meetings. We have committee meetings. We have forums, and we have a platform to work out the issues that come forward. And in the case of women's socioeconomic situations, this is brand new territory, and the possibilities for helping people are enormous as long as people bring their issues to us. And that's why we are trying for this broad outreach, if you will, with the May 10th forum. We're trying to get the word out left, right, and center so that people are not only aware of the issue of gender pay equity, but that there is now a platform that they can come to with the particular issues of concern to them.
So in addition to providing a basis for discussion, like how to make the gender pay issues more equitable, you can also provide resources for women on how to get information or what to do about certain situations, how the law might work, what kinds of issues does the law raise, so that you're giving, it sounds like, women a much broader perspective or a much deeper perspective than they might normally have. My understanding is that the explanation for some of the new legislation is a little bit sketchy. So to be able to, or the details have not yet been filled in through experience, but so to be able to provide that kind of information for women, I think, would be really useful. Yeah. Laura, you talked about the triggering event to bring you to want to start a committee. Peggy, what brought you to want to start this family and women's committee?
Well, again, we saw the crowds swarming the streets, not only in America, but around the world, not only once, but now twice, 2 years in a row, demanding fair treatment on all sorts of levels. But mainly, they seem to be focused on job-related concerns, everything from sexual harassment, again, to glass ceiling problems. And it seems to me that energy, that enthusiasm has to be channeled and brought to the attention of sympathetic people who will do something about it. So it seemed that, grassroots activities could be continued, not just every January, but on an ongoing basis by our community board. I mean, the problems aren't just every January, the problems are every day of people's lives, and it's not just women, it's men, it's people. And so why can't we provide an ongoing venue for the concerns of our community and perhaps New York broadly, but certainly for our community?
Well, I know you and I have talked about grassroots being the basis of democracy. So to be able to try and affect change through conversation, through dialogue, through influence would be really helpful. But on a practical level, if a woman came and said, my husband had been beating me, or my husband is an alcoholic or a drug addict, or took all our money and I don't know what to do, would you be able to provide resources or help or suggestions to people in that position?
Neither one of us are legal experts, but we do know how to find things out. So I would encourage, if there was a woman who needed help, to call the board office, and she will be referred to our committee, and we'll work to find out, an expert who can help her. So I think that's really important. I also wanted to say that we do really encourage men to become part of this effort, because women can do as much as they want to try to, get things. But the fact of the matter is, we're all in this together. It's not going to change until we have the support and the encouragement of men. So please get involved.
I think that's terrific. Do you have, well, I guess that was your closing remark. Peggy, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Oh, yes. I would like to reiterate that we want everyone possible to attend our forum Thursday, May 10th at 6:30 p.m. It'll start 6:30 sharp. We will be having a Pay Equity for Women Getting Your Fair Wage forum. It'll be held in the auditorium of Memorial Sloan Kettering's Rockefeller Research Laboratories. That's at 430 East 67th Street near York Avenue in Manhattan. The event is free, it's open to the public, and we invite everyone. Thank you very much.
You actually urge everyone to
Yes,
come.
right.
Thank you so much for being here. Your work is extremely important given the recent attention to issues such as pay equity and harassment, and we're all familiar with those stories. It was a great pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for joining us tonight for this segment of CB8 Speaks. An archive of past broadcasts is available on the cb8m.com website and on YouTube. Thank you so
very
much. And thank you, Lori and Peggy. It was just a great time I had here, and I hope the audience feels the same way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Alida.
you.